Tonight, my honor and privilege is to introduce Paul V. Johnson. In this state of Minnesota with many Scandinavians, we have to say Paul V. because there are many Paul Johnsons, I'm sure. And so it's Paul V. Johnson. Paul has spent nearly 40 years working in the areas of loss, grief, and bereavement in a variety of professional contexts. For 10 years, he was a faculty member at Bethel University in St. Paul, where he taught a course on death and dying. And I think he was called what? The death man on campus? Is that how it was? The death man. I think you taught sociology, am I right? Yes. Following his tenure at Bethel, Paul developed and held the position of Director of Aftercare Services with the Bradshaw Funeral Homes in the Twin Cities. One of the earliest in this country, by the way, for funeral homes to provide bereavement follow-up. His last professional position was that of Bereavement Services Supervisor with Health Partners Hospice and Palliative Care in Bloomington. In retirement, his interests now center around leading a small group at his church, volunteering with Ling Bloomston's foundation called The Gathering program, spending time with his grandchildren, and playing pickleball. What I know of Paul is as co-investigators in a hospice study on social support in bereavement at St. John's Hospital back in 1981. We studied 48 bereaved spouses for over a year's time, discovering the value of social support and how programs such as this one cut down on medical visits and promote mental and physical health. Our research study led us into our roles as grief educators, and together we presented a total of 68 day-long workshops entitled Give Sorrow Words, around the state, out of the state, just out of sight, right? We had a wonderful time doing that, so it is more than an honor for me to introduce Paul Johnson to you tonight.
Thank you, Jan. I may have been playing too much pickleball because I've got a sciatica problem now that really is killing me. So that I asked for this stool that I might sit on if I need to, and they graciously fulfilled my wish, so I'm grateful for that.
We have a group for you, Paul.
So it's good to be back in Stillwater. I spent a lot of time here when I was working with the Bradshaw Funeral Homes, and it was always nice to be out here. I'm probably going to date myself as well as give you a clue as to my favorite kind of music when I tell you that one of my favorite singers was Andy Williams. Now, those of you here who are under 40, you might say, Andy who? But those of us who are older know him. I liked everything about him. I liked his comfortable-looking sweaters. I liked the sound of his voice. I even liked the way he held his microphone. It was kind of a special kind of way. But at this time of the year, there's a song that is very much associated with him. And the song, I won't sing it, but it goes, "It's the most wonderful time of the year." Now, there may have been a time prior in your life when you would say that about the Christmas holidays. It's the most wonderful time of the year. But this year, you maybe have some reservations about that because this year you have experienced a loss of some type. Most of you have experienced the loss of a loved one, and this is going to be the first Christmas without that person here. So you might be a little bit worried about how this Christmas and Thanksgiving as well is going to go. And so hopefully the things that we talk about here tonight will provide you with some insights that will help you through these next months. I'm even going to pose a scenario that might happen to you, but hopefully because you're here tonight, it won't happen to you. But here's what that scenario is. It will be about 2 weeks, a little more from tonight. The date will be November 1st. The night before was Halloween, and you've done all of that stuff, and you get up that next morning, and if you still are one who has a calendar on the wall and not in your phone, you look at that calendar and you realize, oh, it's November. And as you pick October up to tear it off, you see November under there, and that bold Thanksgiving Day is there. And then you realize, hey, if I pick up that, and then I'm going to see Christmas. And if you had your druthers, maybe you'd say, I'd like to take these 2 months, or 3 months, October, November, December, tear them all off at the same time and start out brand new on January 1. Why? Because you don't know what these days are going to bring. And hopefully the things we talk about tonight will help you so that those holidays aren't going to be as difficult as they might be otherwise. I'm going to begin by reading something. It's a handout that you all have, and you can follow it if you want while I'm reading it. But I'm reading it because it kind of sets the stage for the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about today. And here's how it goes. I was handed a package the other day. It was wrapped securely to be mailed away. Attached to the outside, as plain as could be, was a simple note for all to see. Here's what that note said. Please rush through the holiday season, too painful to open for any reason. Contained within, find one bereaved heart, fragile, broken, falling apart. Tried to go shopping the other day. The hype of the season blew me away. Sat down to write cards. That was insane. Couldn't find my list or even think of my name. People say, come over, be of good cheer. Celebrate the holidays, prepare a new year. But my grief overwhelms me like waves in the sea. Can they cope with my crying and unsettled me? I just don't have any holiday cheer. Decorations, traditions, a big family meal. I can't do it this year. Do you know how I feel? Guilty and frustrated. I've let everyone down. Our holiday celebrations used to be the very best in town. So just ship me away, address unknown. When my grief is over, I might fly home. Signed, Bereaved Heart. Maybe you could sign your name at the bottom of that. Well, we'll let Bereaved Heart be for a while, because we're going to talk about some things, and we'll come back and see how he or she is doing. What I would like to do with you tonight is provide what I call 3-word pictures of what it's like to be a grieving person during the holiday season. And to do that, I've got this Christmas decorative bag here. And inside of the bag, I've got 3 toys that are going to help me make my points. And when you get home tonight or sometime else, when you think back to what I talked about, maybe remembering the toy will help you think about what it is I was talking about. So here's the first toy. Here's the first word picture. A grieving individual during the holidays is like a football player running down the field. Now, I've got this purple football because we're 5-0. And I know I'm pretty close to Packerland. It's just across the river, but I don't have a Packer ball. I've got a Viking ball. Well, my point is this. I'm going to mix a couple of metaphors here, but I hope you can track with me. Being that grieving person, you're like a football player. The football player is the grieving person. And the field, instead of being marked in 10-yard intervals, it's like a calendar. And he, at the time of his loss, the death of a loved one in his family, he's up at the January end of the field. But to score this touchdown, he's got to get all the way to the other end, to where December is. And when he's up here in January, even here, he can look down the field and he sees a couple of players out on the field. One of them's got Thanksgiving across the chest. The other one has Christmas across the chest. And he's okay at this point, but as he keeps moving down the field and getting closer and closer, those two guys start getting bigger and bigger. And he says, well, I got to get there, but look at those guys that are in my way. Can he turn around and run the other way to get away? Not if he wants to make a touchdown. So what does a good football player do when he's coming up against tacklers like Thanksgiving and Christmas? He knows he's going to get tackled, so he turns his body in such a way that he gets hit where he's got some padding. You're that football player. How's your padding? Because you can start putting on padding now that's going to help you deal with those hits that will be coming in November and December. So I'm going to suggest a few ways of putting on some padding. The first one is maybe the hardest one to accept, and it's basically the fact that at this point you should accept the fact that there's going to be some painful times during those months of November and December. I wish I could tell you that there won't be any, but that wouldn't be true because there are going to be some tough times. And so admitting that now and realizing that when those tough times come, they'll be easier to handle at that point. So don't try to kind of rise above everything and say, hey, I'm going to be perfectly fine. Know that there's going to be some difficult times. Okay, another kind of padding is to plan for these holidays. Plan ahead for them, because having plans in your mind allow you to not have to be worrying about making decisions right up as they get closer and closer. Decide ahead of time who you want to be with and where you want to be. And later on in my talk, I'm going to be giving you a way of doing that. But plan ahead. Don't find yourself saying, boy, I hope that this is going to happen, or I really am expecting this to happen. You need to plan for it to happen. So plan ahead. Another way of putting on some padding that's kind of related to that is to express yourself. Tell the people in your life who you will be spending these holidays with what you would like to do and what you would not like to do. People can't read your mind. Even your best friends can't read your mind. You need to say, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, I really don't want to do this. And if you express those things ahead of time, people will know where you are coming from. Another way of putting on some padding, take charge of the things that are going on in your life, at least as much as you can take charge. When your loved one died, you probably felt like your whole world was spinning out of control at that point and you didn't have charge of anything. But there are some things that you can still take charge of in your life. During the holiday season, we all know that one of the battles we face is all the treats and stuff that are around all the time. Decide ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to overindulge myself on all of those Christmas cookies and other candies and that sort of thing. Keep up your exercising even through the holiday time, because exercising is a great way of taking care of yourself. And try to get the appropriate amount of sleep, because grieving is very difficult and tiresome, and getting the amount of sleep you need is extremely important. Here's another way of putting on some padding. Be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Some of you are bound and determined to make this Christmas just like it's been every year in the past. It has to be the same. Well, it can't be the same because that important person in your life isn't there. So don't try to do something that you can't do. And some things come up during the holidays that you need to make some decisions about. One of the issues that a lot of people deal with in their first holiday is the sending out of Christmas cards. They wonder, what should I do? How can I do this? Well, let me tell you a story about a man who maybe some of you even know, because I met him when I was out here working with the funeral home, and he was a retail clothier here in Stillwater, but he worked at the funeral home as a support staff person. And his name was Herb, and Herb and his wife Paula lived here in Stillwater, and they had the most extensive Christmas card list I'd ever seen. He started talking with me about it one time, and I couldn't believe all the people that he knew who he sent cards to. Well, in this particular year, in October of that year, Paula died, somewhat unexpectedly. And Herb and I were standing around maybe a couple of weeks after that, we were just chatting, and he started sharing with me one of the things he was really having some trouble dealing with. And what that was he said, I still want to send Christmas cards, but one thing, because Paula's death was so recent, some of the people on my list won't even know that she's died. And I can't spend time writing on every card about what what occurred for her. And then he said the other part is, for 50 plus years, we've been signing our cards, Herb and Paula. And he said, I just can't face signing it just Herb. So we kept on chatting, and I didn't come up with these answers. He kind of came up with it himself. What he ended up doing to take care of both of those issues is he typed up a short paragraph describing the details of Paula's death, and he made enough copies of that so that he could put one in every card. So he wasn't writing it, but everybody would get the same information. Then the second issue about signing his name, he signed every card, Herb and Paula. But after her name in parentheses, he put, my Christmas angel. So that was his way of dealing with something that was really bothering him. So hopefully, if you have some of those kinds of issues, you can chat with someone about suggestions of what you might do with your particular issue, and they maybe can give you a hand in deciding what to do. Another way of putting on some padding is to remember your loved one. Remember to remember your loved one. Now, for me to tell you to remember your loved one is like for me telling you to remember to breathe. I mean, you don't need a reminder to remember your loved one. But what I'm suggesting is doing something formal as a way of remembering them during the holidays. Maybe have a table somewhere in your home where you've got a picture of them and some other memorabilia that applies to them, maybe a small tree if you're into that, and have it there so that when others come to visit you, they will see that and they'll know, hey, it's okay for me to talk about your husband because you've got that very nice memorial there for him. And so doing something like that would be a way of formally remembering your loved one. But then you may want to try something else, something that my family and I did almost 30 years ago now. And that was, my family's tradition back in those days was for our whole family, my parents, my older brother and his family, my two younger sisters, to get together in Des Moines, Iowa, which is where one of my sisters lived. We'd go down there on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and we'd spend the whole Thanksgiving weekend together. We had really good times doing that. Well, in 1995, my mom was killed in a car accident. And in 1996, my dad died after a lengthy battle with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And on that Thanksgiving of 96, my biggest concern was we were all still going to be down at my sister's home in Des Moines, and my fear was that nobody was going to say anything at all about Mom and Dad because, sometimes people don't want to bring up those losses. And I thought, I've got to do something to make sure that that doesn't happen. So what I did was this. Before I went down there, I took a sheet of paper this size and cut it into quarters. And I had enough of those for everybody who would be there. Now this would be, as I said, before my parents' death, they would be there. But after their death, it would be my siblings, their families, a widowed aunt of ours, and even some people who lived in Des Moines who my sister knew. And so here's what I suggested. We were just about done eating our Thanksgiving dinner, and before everybody got up to go either watch football on TV or play football outside, I said, hey, I want us to do something before everybody leaves. And as soon as I said that, I could see people starting to roll their eyes and, oh, what's he gonna do now? But I didn't let that stop me. I took these sheets of paper, these quarter sheets of paper, and I passed them around, and I said, I want everybody to take two sheets of paper. And also here, I've got some pens here. Take a pen if you don't have one. So everybody got one, and I said, okay, here's what I'd like you to do. This is Thanksgiving. I'd like you, on one of those sheets of paper you have, to write something that you're thankful for about grandma or mom. And on the other one, I want you to write something you're thankful for about dad, or just put things down about him that you were thankful for while he was alive. Again, a little hesitancy on everybody's part, but I stood my ground and they started writing. And when it looked like everybody was done, I said, okay, take your individual pieces and fold them up. Just fold them in half or in quarters. And I've got this basket, I'm gonna pass it around, and everybody put theirs in the basket. So they did, came all the way around back to me, and then I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do next. I want each one of you to take one out of the basket as it comes around again. And some of you will get one, both of them refer to mom or both of them refer to dad. That doesn't make any difference. I just want you to take them. So anyway, as everybody picked theirs up, I said, here's what we're going to do. I want you to read what's on that sheet. 2 hours later, we were still sitting around those tables. Had we laughed? Yes, we'd laughed. Had we cried? Yes, we'd cried. But the things that were shared were incredible. Things that only young kids would think about. One of the cousins, this was really a niece or nephew of mine who was pretty young at that time, wrote about the fact that he was thankful for Grandma's chocolate cake and how she had a way of, in the pan when she'd frosted it, there was always a little extra frosting, and she'd put that in a certain part of the cake. And when the cake was being served, you couldn't just cut out that piece that had that on it. You had to take them in order. So everybody, this young kid said, I always hoped that I would get the piece that had that extra frosting on it. So we had a great time of reminiscing, a wonderful time. And I would encourage you maybe at Thanksgiving, if you're going to be together with some of the same people that you're going to be with at Christmas, that might be something that you might want to do. Now, in addition to the fact of formally remembering, just remembering who the person is, I also want to encourage you to how you remember that person. I'm going to read another verse here that I've read this at every presentation I've done since March of 2021, because that was the month that my wife Barb died. And I had used this in a grief group before that, and it really was beneficial to the men that I was working with, but now for me it was even more beneficial. Listen to what this author says. The author's name is anonymous, so I can't tell you who did it, but listen to what he or she said. It's entitled, Remembering with Gratitude. You can shed tears that she's gone, or you can smile because she has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that she's left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she's gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what she'd want. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. And so I hope all of you can remember your loved one with gratitude as you go through the holiday season. So, being a grieving person during the holidays is like a football player running down the field. And I can almost guarantee that your case might be like this football player who does get tackled, but he gets up after it and he says, yeah, it hurt a bit when I went down, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And he continued on with his life. So, that's word picture number one. Word picture number two. Word picture one dealt with an individual. Word picture number two deals with a family. And I know that several of you here tonight are probably here with family members. But being a grieving family during the holidays is like being in a canoe on a very swift-flowing river. Here's my canoe. Little show of hands here. How many of you have been in a canoe? Okay, keep your hands up. Put your hand down if you've never tipped over in a canoe. Okay, whose ever hands are alive, still up, you're either lying or you didn't go very far in that canoe, because a canoe is a pretty unstable craft. And you know that if you've been in a canoe, you need whoever's in there together, you've all got your spot, and it has to be balanced out or that thing's going to tip over, especially on that river if you come upon rapids. Now, a typical family can go through a lot of rapids in their normal everyday activity. There could be the rapids when Dad was unemployed and you wondered, how are we going to get through this time? Or when Mom needed to be hospitalized because of something, or because the son was having issues at school, or because the daughter had some eating issues. And they were hard to get through, but you got through. But sometime in the last year, something very difficult happened. A member of your family who was in that canoe has been removed from the canoe. And when it first happened, wow, you felt like we were going to go over right then and there because it was such a difficult time. But you made it through. But now I think because of that loss, you're facing probably what I would call the toughest rapids of all. I call them the Christmas rapids. Why are the Christmas, I should probably include all of the holidays, the holiday rapids, why are they difficult? Well, here's some of the reasons why I think they're maybe as difficult as any of those other. The first one being, as we said when we started, some of us would almost like to avoid being involved in holiday things this year. But have you noticed you can't get away from Christmas stuff even now? I mean, Target and Walmart and all those stores have had their Christmas stuff up forever. You see ads for artificial Christmas trees on the TV. It won't be too long before that one station, I think it's 108, will play exclusively Christmas music. And it's like you can't get away from it. Everywhere you look, you're reminded, signs along the river, Christmas is coming, Christmas is coming. And so that's one of the reasons I think why they're difficult. Another reason why I think they might be difficult is the fact that the person in your life who died may have been your Christmas person. What I mean by that is this. As a kid growing up in Grantsburg, Wisconsin, we would go to bed on a typical November night, and we get up the next morning, and as we came downstairs, all of the knickknacks and everything that typically were there were changed into Christmas kinds of things. The Christmas tree was actually up and decorated, and here we'd come down as little kids, bright-eyed, and say, oh, wow, look at all that. And Mom would say, yeah, the Christmas elves were here last night, and they did all of this. And we said, right, Mom, you did all of this. Because she was our Christmas person. She was the one that made that stuff happen. And maybe your loved one who died was your Christmas person. And you're wondering, how in the world are we going to be able to get everything done that we need to get done? I think another reason that they're difficult is that even in the best of times, even when your loved one was still living, Christmas can be a very stressful time. Stressful socially, stressful financially, stressful in a lot of ways. And that maybe your loved one who died was the person who helped you deal with that stress. And now they aren't going to be there to help you. Well, given that, what is a family to do in order to get through these holiday rapids? Well, I do want you to take the handout that you have that has the sheet that has this grid on it. Because this grid, if you use it wisely, could help you deal with a lot of things beforehand that will make your Christmas experience better. You'll see on there the heading in the upper left corner says Holiday Job List. And underneath there are numerous things that a lot of people get involved in around the holiday season. And if there are things that you are involved in that aren't listed there, notice there are several blank spaces at the bottom of that column where you can put other things in. And what you need to do, as you're going down this rapids, you're going down the river and you're getting close to the rapids, you need to get off the river. You need to take the people who are in that canoe with you, and you need to sit down with them, and with this sheet in hand, make some decisions. Notice the headings across the top. Would the holidays be the holidays without it? Any of those where you would answer yes, that would mean, okay, if they'd still be the holidays even if we didn't do it, that might mean we don't have to do that one if we decide not to. The next one says, is this something you want to do differently? I bet every one of you have got some things in your Christmas activities that you've wanted to change or do differently, but you just haven't done it to this point. I'm going to mention this, hopefully not stepping on anybody's toes, but a Christmas tradition that I would be happy if it wasn't a tradition anywhere anymore is the making of the annual Christmas fruitcake. In my opinion, fruitcakes are best used as door stoppers or boat anchors or whatever, because I've never liked them, and a lot of work to make them, I'm assuming, and I think that's something that could change. Well, I used this illustration several years ago now, and there was a woman sitting way in the back, and she raised her hand and she said, "But you've never tasted my fruitcake." And I said, "I'm sure it's very good," and just kind of went on. Well, 2 days later, I went out to get my mail. I lived in Buffalo, Minnesota at the time, and we had a country-type mailbox, so anybody could put anything in there. And I went out there, and there was this little square package. And I brought it inside, and it was pretty heavy for the size that it was. And I took off the first wrapping, and there was this kind of like white powder around it. And that was the time where we were warned that if you get anything with white powder on it, don't do anything with it. Well, I opened it up, and sure enough, there was a piece of this woman's fruitcake. And I took a bite of it, but I haven't changed my opinion about fruitcake. But my point is this: you've all got a fruitcake kind of thing probably in your family that you've wanted to change for years, but for whatever reason you haven't. The next column there says, is it done out of habit, tradition, choice, or obligation? Probably obligation isn't a great reason to do it. Just because it's a habit isn't. Choice is probably the best reason, and we do need to keep some traditions. But you can determine a thing's importance if you answer yes or no to that, or put in which of those four it is. The next one says, is it a one-person job or can it be shared? It's always nice when we can share these responsibilities. And then the last two columns are especially important. Who is responsible for seeing that it gets done? If your name appears on every line, you've got too much responsibility. And then, do you like doing it? If you don't like doing it, well, maybe it's time to stop doing it. So, being a grieving family during the holidays means you're going down the river and you come to these rapids. And yeah, you're going to take on a little water maybe, but you're going to make it through okay. Last but not least, being a grieving person during the holidays is like this toy. I don't know if you can see it from where it is. It's a rhinoceros. It's got a horn on its nose, and the skin looks to be thick. But it's a kind of toy that if you know what you're doing with it, it changes. What do we call these? Transformers. I bet you've all got a transformer in your house. Well, being a grieving person is like being a transformer toy. Because prior to the loss that you've experienced, you were a rhinoceros. You hung around with other rhinoceroses. You went to all the best rhinoceros restaurants. You watched all the rhinoceros movies, and life was great. But then your loved one died. Their life as a rhinoceros ended. What happened to you? You got transformed. You got transformed into something you've never been before. And quite honestly, you don't like it. Life as a rhinoceros was much better than this life. Well, we can't bring your loved one back. What we need to do is to learn how to live our lives in this new form. How do we do that? I've got 3 quick questions, and then I'll be done. 3 questions that you need to ask and answer. Here are these 3 questions. First one is this: what have I lost? I want you to be very specific about what it is you've lost. If it was your spouse who died, if it was your husband who died, I don't want you to say, my husband died, and leave it at that. That's correct, that's an answer, but it's not good enough. I would want you to identify the things that you lost when that person died. For a wife, she might say, well, I lost my economic security because my husband brought home his paycheck every 2 weeks for the past 50 years. I lost the guy who I could tell anything to and know that it wouldn't come back to haunt me. I lost the guy who warmed up our bed every night before I climbed in. I lost the guy who'd eat anything I cooked, and no matter how bad it may have tasted, tell me it was wonderful. You see all the things you lose in a person when a person dies? I would encourage you to get a spiral notebook and write down every one of those, because it's important to grieve every one of them. We can't grieve a loss until we've identified it. So, what have I lost? Spend some time thinking about that as you think about your loved one who has died. That's the first question. The second question is, what do I have left? And if I ask some of you right now, what do you have left? Some of you, depending on how recent your loved one's death was, you might come back and say to me, I don't have anything left. My husband, my wife, my child, my parent was so important in my life that now that they're gone, I don't feel like I have anything left. Well, if that's you, I know that you have something left because you're here tonight. If you had nothing left, you wouldn't be here. You'd be curled up at home with all the lights off and feeling sorry for yourself. But you aren't. You're here. You're involved in finding things that will help you as a grieving person. So, on another page of that spiral notebook, write the question, what do I have left? And write down all the things that you still have going for you, because those are all things that are going to help you through this time. Last but not least is the question, what may still be possible for me? Because your life continues. Your life goes on. It didn't stop. And there are still things that you're going to do with your life. Maybe you'll do some things with your life that honors the memory of your loved one by participating in a certain organization or raising funds for something or that sort of thing. But find a way that you can really take the memories you have of your loved one and use them in a positive kind of way. So those 3 questions: what have I lost? What do I have left? What may still be possible for me will help you proactively deal with your grief, rather than just sitting at home and saying, I sure hope tomorrow is better than today, because today wasn't very good. Working on something like this will help you move along. Okay, quickly, 2 minutes left. We left Bereaved Heart kind of wanting to go anywhere. Here's the rest of the story. I just couldn't send Bereaved Heart away, so I jotted a note and left it that day. Here's what this note said. Dear Bereaved Heart, the death of your loved one has forced you to start a new type of living that's hard on the heart. Undecorating your life of its angers and fears is not easy to do without shedding some tears. And untying your guilt can release a bundle of strife. Questions are stirred up about living and life. Don't be concerned now with invitations or big meals. See how the little stuff handles and feels. Let the love of your family, neighbors, or friends uphold and sustain you when you're at loose ends. Most are eager to be there, willing to share. Tell them your needs and they'll show you they care. They'll take you shopping, write cards, even cook. Let that stuff go now. Get yourself off the hook. You need time for healing. You've much work to do. Your heart needs some mending. Give that gift to you. Take a walk, read a book, try something your style. Make sure it's relaxing, makes you pause, rest a while. When holiday invitations knock at your door, don't say yes to 5 when you only want 4. If you wish to remember your loved one who died, plant a tree, give a gift, let your heart be your guide. This season of wonder can bring you relief if you're willing to unwrap your tears and your grief. Please listen, Bereaved Heart. Stay close and please dare to open your package and let others care. Signed, your friend, and I hope you've all got a friend by this same name. See you soon, because they're going to be a part of your life. Well, again, thank you for coming tonight, and I hope that some of the things I've shared from here will be helpful, and as you go to your group, you can talk more about them, and you can share with each other about things that you have been doing that have been helpful for you. So thanks again for your attention tonight. Time for questions?
Questions? Take a couple.
Any comments or questions that anybody might want to?
Did you ever watch the game after that 2-hour chat?
No, they were all over by then. Yep.
With the grid, it's very self-focused.
Yep.
And if the family sustain a loss, like I lost my parents, my kids lost their grandparents, where I may feel I don't want to put up a Christmas tree or I don't want to do X, Y, Z because I'm not quite into it. But yet I feel I need to bring the joy of the holiday to others, even though I'm suffering. And I just want your perspective on that.
Okay, good question. The reason that I suggested that with this grid, that you get together with the people who are you're going to be spending Christmas with, regardless of their age, they can have input on this stuff, and you can get a feel for, like kids. We can't take Christmas away from kids and not do certain things that have been always been a part of it. So yeah, we need to keep other people in mind. And but again, if you're the Christmas person in your family and all of these responsibilities fall on you, hopefully you can get some other folks to be involved in meeting some of those needs. So I'm glad you brought that up, that we do need to keep some of the Christmas stuff going for the kids' sake, because they're dealing with this in a different, probably, kind of way than we are.
Maybe we have time for one more question. Anybody have one? Comment or question? Okay. I think
Good.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give them a good round.